Hello students, as you all have learnt in the chapter of nutrition that the food which is taken by us finally reaches to the intestine and then it is absorbed there. Similarly, in the chapter of respiration, you have seen that we take oxygen-rich air which comes to our lungs and finally it is also diffused inside the bloodstream. Now question arises, where these materials further goes on. For that we need to study our new chapter, that is the transportation in animals and plants. So today we are going to begin our new chapter of NCERT book, chapter number 11, that is the transportation in animals and plants. In that we will study about our circulatory system. So before going to the circulatory system, I would like to recall your previous knowledge about the physical transportation which we see in our surroundings. We see that on the roads every day so many vehicles are passing here and there carrying a lot of goods which are needed by the human beings of our society. In the same fashion, we have a very wonderful, well-defined system of transportation inside our body also, and that is the circulatory system. First of all, I would like to define what is circulatory system. It is a well-defined system of organs which is responsible for the transportation of essential items and the removal of waste materials from our body. And totally it is called as circulatory system. For the study purpose, we can divide it into three major parts. The first one is the fluid part of the circulatory system, and it is the blood. Second one is the channels or the vessels which are needed for the transportation, and they are the blood vessels. And third one is the key organ of the circulatory system, and it is the heart. So one by one we will take these topics of our circulatory system. So let us begin with the blood. So the first question is, what is blood? So we can say that blood is the fluid part, red colored fluid which flows inside or which circulates inside our circulatory system. It comprises of three different kinds of cells. The first one is RBC, second is WBC, and third one is platelets. So now come to the RBC cells. They are the cells, red colored cells. They are spherical in shape and biconcave. They contains a red colored pigment which is called as hemoglobin. Oxygen which we take inside our body combines with the hemoglobin and reaches to the each and every cell of our body. There it drops the oxygen inside the cell which is used for the oxidation of food, and on the return these RBC cells take back CO2 and finally drop it inside the lungs. So this is how the RBC cells functions for the transportation of important materials needed by our body. Secondly, come to the WBC cells. They are also said to be as bodyguard of our cells. Do you know what is the function of bodyguard? They protect us from our enemies. In the same way, in our surroundings we find so many kinds of harmful germs which continuously attacks on our body. And naturally we have a very well-defined defense system in our body, and that is called as our immune system. So these WBC cells comprises or they makes our immune system, and this immune system continuously fights with the germs and protects us from so many kinds of diseases. So this is all about the WBC cells. And third one is the platelets, very important cells of the blood. Students, you have seen very frequently that several times while playing in the grounds or doing something with the knife in the kitchen, you frequently get cuts on your fingers or somewhere else in the body. You see that generally we do not apply any kind of treatment or any kind of ointment over that wound. But even though the place of that wound gets a kind of clot over it, which stops the bleeding of blood. It is all because of these kinds of platelets which are responsible for the clotting process while the bleeding in our body. So then finally come to the functions of the blood. The blood is the means of transport which is essential for the body. Secondly, it regulates our body temperature, and thirdly, it keeps the temperature throughout the body constant. So students, after understanding blood, now let us begin the blood vessels, the pathways through which the blood circulates throughout our body, and they are of three different kinds. The first one is artery, second veins, and third one capillaries. So we will discuss all these three different types of blood vessels one by one. First come to the arteries. Arteries are the blood vessels that carry pure or oxygenated blood from heart towards the different parts of our body. Only one exception is there, and it is the pulmonary artery, which carries deoxygenated blood from heart towards the lungs for purification. Second one is the vein. They are the blood vessels which carries impure blood or deoxygenated blood from different parts of the body towards the heart. And there also one exception case is there, and it is the pulmonary vein. This brings back the pure or oxygenated blood from the lungs towards the heart. And in between arteries and veins, there are fine and very thin walled channels. They are called as capillaries. Actually, the exchange of materials and gases takes place at this level only. So capillaries are very thin walled channels which are present in the organs, and they connect to the cells, various cells, different cells. And when the blood containing oxygen, food, or any other useful material reaches up to the capillary level, there the exchange takes place. The useful material goes inside the cell through the walls of the capillaries, while the excretory waste materials comes inside the blood stream. Again, these capillaries now gets connected to the veins on the other end, and finally these veins comes towards the heart, and through the vena cava they finally joins the heart, and in this way they brings back the deoxygenated blood into the right side of the heart in the upper chamber of the heart, that is the right auricle. From the right auricle, the blood now comes to the ventricle. After blood vessels, now come to the main or the key organ of our circulatory system, and it is the heart. So as we know that heart is the pumping organ of our circulatory system, because the blood needs to reach each and every part of our body from head to toe. For that purpose it needs a very high pressure, and that pressure is developed in the blood by the pumping of the heart. We know that heart is made up of special kinds of muscles which have contracting and relaxing power in themselves. They are actually involuntary muscles, and they continue their work throughout the life of any human being. It consists of 4 chambers. The upper 2 chambers are called as auricles, while the lower 2 chambers are called as ventricles. In the center, internally, the heart is divided by a muscular wall which divides the heart into 2 sides, left side and right side. The left side receives or contains the pure blood or oxygenated blood, while the right side contains impure or deoxygenated blood. Now come to the circulation of the blood. As you see the picture of schematic diagram of circulation of blood, and functioning of heart. You can take an idea from this picture. It is well explaining, giving you, it is sufficient to give you the much idea about how the blood circulates in our body. So for understanding the functioning of the heart, first you have an overview of a schematic diagram of our circulatory system, which clearly indicates about the process of circulation or the path or the, you can say, the cycle of circulation in our body. You see that in the center there is the heart, and above the heart there are the lungs, and below on the both sides of the heart there are arteries and veins, and all are connected with each other, and the blood flows in this complete picture in a cyclic manner. So first of all, the heart receives pure or oxygenated blood through the pulmonary vein in the upper chamber of the left side, and that is the auricle. When the walls of the left auricle contracts, they push the blood filled inside them through a wall inside into the lower chamber of the heart, that is the left ventricle. At the same time, the right ventricle, which was having impure blood in it, it also contracts with the side by side with the right auricle, and the impure blood filled in that chamber finally reaches into the lower chamber, that is right ventricle. Now, after the contraction of auricles, now it is the time of contraction of ventricles. Both the ventricles contract, and the blood filled in respective ventricles finally pushed up and to the different channels. The blood from the left ventricle is pushed towards the aorta, while the blood filled in the right ventricle is pushed towards the pulmonary artery, which takes the blood for oxygenation up to the lungs. So in this way, the complete process runs throughout the body in a cyclic manner, and in this way we have the circulation of blood in our body. This is all about the mechanisms of circulation in the heart. After understanding the heart, now you have to become familiar with some terms like the heartbeat and pulse rate. As earlier I have told you that our heart is made up of cardiac muscles which contract and relax throughout their life. So during this contraction and relaxations, the heart generates an impulse which is called as heartbeat, and normally a healthy human being have 70 to 80 heartbeats in a minute. This heartbeat can be observed at certain places in the arteries like the wrist also, and if we put our middle finger in the middle of our wrist, we can feel a kind of jerk due to the heartbeat at that place, and we can, by seeing the time, we can count it also. So if we count these jerks in a minute, they also comes around 70 to 80 in a minute. It means the heartbeat as well as the pulse rate are the same. We can say the heartbeat generates the pulse in our wrist, and in this way we can easily come to know about our heartbeat, either it is normal or it is somewhat below or going ahead. In the same way, the doctors also find out our heartbeat by counting our pulse rate. This is all about the circulation of blood in human being. Now, we have another kind of transportation in our body, and that is the transportation of waste materials generated in the cells. So we know that the cells generate a kind of waste material in our body, and that is the urea, and it is present in our blood. So for the removal of waste materials, we also need a kind of system in our body that can continuously remove such kinds of waste materials which are toxic for our body, and most of the toxic of such materials is the urea. And for removal of urea, we need a very specialized system in our body, and that is the excretory system. It comprises of a pair of kidneys, then two tubular ducts which arises from the kidneys, and these two ducts finally joins ureter, muscular bag-like structure, and this ureter finally opens outside through urethral opening. So whenever the blood comes into the kidneys, the capillaries inside it filters the useful materials and reabsorb it, while the unuseful material, which is called as urine, finally comes through the two ducts into the urinary bladder, and this urinary bladder finally discharges the urine outside the body time to time. So in this way we get rid of these kinds of excretory waste material, especially of urea through the urine. So let us define what is urine. So urine is a mixture of water, maximum part of it is water, and 2.5% is urea and 2.5% are other salts. So in this way this urine is removed from our body, which contains mostly the excretory waste materials which are harmful for our body. So when the blood comes into the kidney, the capillaries inside it filters the useful materials and reabsorb them, while the unuseful material like urea and some other salts which are toxic for us, they finally comes along with the water in the form of urine through the two ducts coming from each kidney, which are finally joining the urinary bladder. So every day an adult human being approximately discharges 1 to 1.8 liter of urine per day, which contains 95% water, 2.5% urea and 2.5% other salts. Other than the urination, we also have another kind of excretion system, that is the formation of sweat. In summers, generally you observe that your clothes get white patches, especially in the underarms or near the collar areas. So any one of you have any question arises in your mind about it? Yes, it is the sweat formation, and it is also a kind of excretion through the pores of our skin. So in summer season, when it is very hot, our body itself has a cooling system through the sweat. The sweat comes outside the skin pores and it has some dissolved salts in it, which finally gets absorbed by the clots, and the water evaporates, leaving the white patches behind in the cloth. So in this way the sweat releases some waste materials also, and it cools our body. So in this way sweating is beneficial for all of us. Now come to some other animals also. They also have a similar way of excretory system in their body, but somewhat different from us. Some aquatic animals like fishes, they releases ammonia, a water soluble chemical which easily get dispersed into the water. Similarly, some land animals like birds, lizards, snakes, etc., they releases a semi-solid compound, white colored compound called as uric acid, and we human beings excrete urea. So this is all about the excretion and various excretory waste products of our body as well as of some other animals. Now I want to take your kind attention towards one of the major problem of our excretory system, especially of kidneys. In this present world, we are might aware about the certain chronic diseases, and one of the very deadly diseases is the disease of kidneys. Many of the times, so many people get their kidneys damaged due to some accidents or due to some internal problems also. So can you guess what happens when these kidneys do not function if in anybody? Certainly it is that the toxic material which are formed inside the body will remain as it is in the body, and if they will continue for much longer time in the body, they will be very toxic and lastly dreadful also. So for that purpose, such persons need to be filtered it artificially, and the process, the phenomena through which this filtration takes place is called as dialysis. So dialysis is the process, artificial process of filtration of blood when the kidneys do not function properly or they get damaged somehow. So for that purpose, the blood is taken out from the body of the diseased person and they are filtered just like the kidneys through a artificial machine called as dialyzer. And again, from the dialyzer, that filtered blood is introduced into the body, and in this way such patients have to be regular dialyzed either weekly or 15 days or as per the need of the body. So this is a kind of a gift of science to the patients of kidneys or which have disorders. So in this way, I think now you have got sufficient idea about the transportation of useful materials up to the cells, and also about the removal of harmful or toxic materials from the body. Now come to the plants. Likewise, animals, the plants are also living organisms and they also needs the transportation of useful materials from one part to another part, and for that they have a special kind of tissue inside them, and that is called as vascular tissue. This vascular tissue is of two types. First one is xylem, second is phloem. The xylem is responsible for the transportation of water absorbed by the roots along with the minerals, and the xylem have pipe-like structures, pipe-like cells which join together and forms a long continuous pipe from the roots up to the top of the trees. And in this way the roots absorb the water along with the minerals from it, and through the suction pressure developed by the transpiration process in the leaves, the water continuously rises up to the top of the trees or plants. Similarly, the leaves prepare food during the process of photosynthesis, which is needed by the plants, each and every part of the plant, or it is stored somewhere in the plant. For the transportation of that food, these plants have another kind of vascular tissue which is called as phloem. So we can say phloem is the vascular tissue that transports the prepared food from the leaves towards the various parts of the plants. Now come to the transpiration, the last topic of your chapter. It is a process of removal of water in the form of water vapor from the surface of the leaves through special kinds of pores which are called as stomata. So this transpiration process is very essential for the plants because it develops a kind of pressure inside the plants that pulls the water against the gravity, and in this way the water which is absorbed by the roots finally reaches up to the top part of the plant, that is up to the leaves. And there is one more advantage of transpiration to the plant is that this process keeps the plants cool also. So in this way, this is all about the transportation of food as well as the water in the plants, and it is all with the help of vascular tissue, that is through the xylem and the phloem. So dear students, in this chapter you have studied from the beginning circulatory system of human being, in which you have studied blood vessels and heart. Then you have seen the complete process of circulation of the blood inside our body through well-labeled diagrams and through schematic circulation cycle also. Then he has studied about the blood vessels, blood, its composition, and finally about the heart, where he has seen its internal structure as well as its functioning also. Then you have got idea about the excretory system that removes the toxic materials from our body. And finally, you have also got idea about the transportation system of trees and plants. And in that you have understand about the xylem and phloem and little bit about the process of transpiration also. So that's all about your chapter. I think now you have sufficient idea about the topics of your chapter. So all the best to